Cast Iron Cooking with Jonny.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cast Iron Cooking with Jonny. I am Jonny, and these are my cast irons. Now today we're going to tackle something really simple. We're going to do Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are a great side dish, and they cook up really well in a cast iron, and you need virtually no other ingredients other than just salt and pepper. Now they don't take long either. You can just go ahead and saute them up. We're gonna bake them off as well for a few minutes to get them extra tender on the inside. If you like your Brussels sprouts a little more firm, you can kind of skip this step. You can just put a lid on them and steam while you're cooking up other things. It's pretty easy to do. We like to cook them just for a little bit longer to make sure that they're nice and moist in the center as well. Now before we get started, let's take a brief history lesson on when the Brussels sprout was developed. Most people believe that Brussels sprouts come from Brussels, but that's because they're dummies and don't know any better. Brussels sprouts were actually invented in 1st century Japan by a master gardener named Matsu. Genetically altering the common juniper, Matsu created a bulbous sprout tree and debuted it at the World's Fair in Belgium. A Belgian chef had mistaken it for food and toasted the small tree and sold the sprouts from his food cart, thus making culinary history. Call me a dummy, but I don't believe a word he said. Now back to the sprouts. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to trim them up on the ends. You can see here that there's a little bit of dirty ends on the side that have been sitting in the store. So we're going to chop those off, and then we're going to cut them in half. Just simply in half, that's all you need to do. Now if you do like your Brussels sprouts cut into quarters, that's just fine too. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna take a little bit less time cooking them off at the end. Usually if you saute them up in quarters, then they're almost done by the time you're done sauteing them. So if you wanna cut them in quarters, that's all right. I would recommend giving this one a shot just because I feel like they turn out a lot better this way. All right, now that we have our Brussels sprouts all cut up, we are going to preheat our oven to 375, and we're gonna go ahead and stick our skillet in there with it. If you're going to start cooking with cast iron, get used to preheating your pans. If you know you're gonna bake something off at the end, it's a really nice touch to get it ready to heat up that way. Now today we're gonna be using a 10-inch skillet. This is gonna be plenty of room to cook your Brussels sprouts in. It's gonna be enough for 2 to 3 people in here, or if you're serving it as a side for multiple people, you can add a couple more Brussels sprouts. A 10-inch skillet's still gonna be big enough. Of course, if you need to step up and use a 12-inch and more sprouts, go ahead and do that. The recipe's not gonna change at all. Now we'll stick the skillet in the oven, get it preheated. And now we wait. And now that our pan is preheated, we're gonna kick on the heat to medium, and that's all you're gonna need to crisp up your Brussels sprouts. Really what you're aiming to do is give them a nice blackened edge around the sides. You can kick up the heat to medium high if you don't feel like you're getting the crispiness that you want. And with all my recipes, you wanna make sure you have the right amount of fat and the right heat. We're gonna use about a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of butter. If you're gonna use oil, just make sure there's enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan. So now that our pan is nice and hot, we'll get started. All right, we'll add our fat into the pan. We're just gonna roll it around to make sure the whole pan is covered. And then we're gonna throw in our sprouts. Now, one thing I like to do is make sure that the sprouts are all face down at first. Now, this is gonna be something that you're gonna want to figure out on your own, how you like your sprouts. You also don't need to use your bare hands. You can use tongs. But I'm gonna try to get all these sprouts nestled in, face down in contact with the pan. Now you can get them up on the sides as well. They're gonna get a little bit of residual heat there. Now we're gonna let these sprouts cook like this for about 3 to 5 minutes to start getting that brown on there. It's gonna cool down the pan a little bit when you throw the sprouts in, so be patient. It'll have to heat back up a little bit. If you end up kicking the heat back up every time you put something in, you're gonna start cooking a little too hot. So just be patient. It'll drop the temperature of that pan, but it'll come right back up. One of the myths about cast iron is that they cook really evenly, and that's not necessarily true. They do retain heat very well. You get hot spots in some places, especially depending on the pan that you're using. So you wanna move around and make sure that it gets an even heat all over the pan. All right, these have been sitting here for about 3 to 4 minutes, so now we're just gonna start shaking them around, and you can see there still needs some charring up on some of them. They barely look touched, so if you wanna give them a toss or move them around with your spatula, you can kind of start to see which ones need a little bit more work. Now when shifting these around, as you can tell, I'm leaving some of them face down for a little longer. I want to make sure that all of them get enough time contacted with the pan. Now this can take a little bit of patience, but making sure that all your Brussels sprouts get a little bit of heat where they need it is going to pay off in the end. This recipe you can cook to your liking. If you like your Brussels sprouts a little bit crispier on the outside or a little less crispy, it's all up to you. Just as you go, flip each Brussels sprout, give them a toss, and make up your mind. And as you can see now, they're crisping up real nicely. They're getting even coats on all of the sprouts, getting a little roasting on the back, which is also necessary. And they're gonna roast up and darken up a little bit more when you throw them in the oven. All right, these are just about the consistency that I like, so I'm gonna remove the heat and I'm gonna place them in the oven. All right, it's been 10 minutes, so let's pull these out, take a look. All right, these look great. You can see there's a nice consistency in the darkness on some of them are a little bit lighter. We got some nice crispy bits here. We got these very, very nice Brussels sprouts and very easy to do. You can also see all of the butter has been absorbed into the sprout. This is gonna be super delicious on the inside. And now to top these off, I'm just gonna add a little bit of salt and pepper. As I've said before, I use a salted butter when I'm cooking anything savory, so you don't need to add too much extra salt. A little bit of salt and pepper on top, and they are ready to serve. Now, if you want to get adventurous and you want to add some kind of reduction on top or drizzle something on it, that's totally up to you. The video here is going to just show you how to get your Brussels sprout to this point. And with all my videos, it's going to take you a little bit of trial and error to figure out the right temps for your stove. Every pan's a little bit different, every oven's a little bit different, but this hopefully will give you just an introduction into how to get a raw Brussels sprout into this Brussels sprout. All right, that just about wraps up my cast iron basics Brussels sprout video. I hope you've learned something and I hope you all enjoy cooking. I'll catch you later.